Ever get the urge to crack open a history book, but then remember how massive those things are?
Yeah.
Today, we're your shortcut.
Okay.
You've brought excerpts from Wikipedia's History of Sega page,
Right.
and we're diving deep into how a company known for Sonic the Hedgehog actually got its start, importing jukeboxes.
The classic story of transformation, really. Sega embodies this incredible entrepreneurial spirit, starting small, taking risks, adapting to new landscapes, and ultimately leaving a mark on an entire industry.
Okay, so rewind to the 1930s.
Okay.
We're not even in Japan yet, but in America, with a company called Standard Games.
Right.
They eventually head east, setting up shop as service games in Japan, importing those coin-operated jukeboxes that were all the rage.
And it's that move to Japan that really plants the seeds for Sega's future.
Wow.
Imagine immersing yourself in a culture that would soon become synonymous with gaming innovation.
Yeah.
It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. Your sources mentioned that in the late 50s, legal troubles got service games banned from U.S. military bases in Japan and the Philippines.
Oh, no.
A major setback for any company.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Sometimes setbacks can spark unexpected paths. Service Games splits in 1960.
Okay.
And one of the offshoots is Nihon Goraku Busan. Fast forward to 65, they acquire a company called Rosen Enterprises.
Okay.
And bam! Sega Enterprises is born.
This wasn't just a name change. It marked a fundamental shift.
Right.
Sega moved beyond importing to actually manufacturing amusement machines.
Whoa.
And their very first self-made game in '66. A submarine simulator called Periscope.
Oh, cool.
What made it a hit? Groundbreaking sound and light effects at a time when that was unheard of.
Wow. So Periscope was a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
It even hopped the pond to the U.S., becoming one of the first arcade games to cost $0.25.
Wow.
Back in Japan, that success fueled Sega's game development fire.
Right.
By the mid-'80s, they were practically reviving the arcade scene with games like Hang On and Outrun. But these weren't your typical stand-up cabinets, were they?
Not at all.
Okay.
This is where Sega's Taikan philosophy comes in, meaning bodily sensation.
Okay.
Picture yourself in an 80s arcade.
Okay, yeah.
And you see this massive Outrun cabinet.
Right.
You're not just playing, you're getting into a replica car that moves with the game.
Okay.
Sega wasn't just creating games. They were crafting experiences that went beyond the screen.
Right.
That immersive, feel-it-in-your-gut approach. That's key to understanding their later success in the console war.
It's like they were laying the groundwork without even realizing it.
Right.
This wasn't just about chasing trends. They were about pushing the boundaries of what a game could be.
And that innovative spirit becomes even more crucial as we move into the next chapter, the dawn of the console wars.
Oh, okay.
But that, my friend, is a story for another time. So we're talking about the dawn of the console wars. And Sega's early attempts might not be as iconic as their arcade triumphs.
Right.
But they're essential to understanding the company's journey. We need to rewind to 1983 and the release of the SG-1000.
Released on the same day as the Famicom in Japan? That's like stepping into the ring with the champ on day one.
Precisely. Imagine trying to launch a new console when your competitor, Nintendo, already has a head start and is busy locking down all the top game developers. That was Sega's reality.
Oof. Talk about an uphill battle. They were dealing with licensing hurdles that made it tough to compete.
Yeah.
The SG-1000, despite its technical capabilities, struggled to find a foothold.
Right.
And its successor, the Master System, faced similar challenges even with its cool design and innovative features like downloadable games.
It's worth noting that the Master System did achieve some success in regions like Europe and Brazil.
Okay.
But in the North American market, Nintendo's dominance proved to be a significant obstacle.
But here's the thing about Sega. They're fighters. They learn from their setbacks, adapt, and come back swinging. Which brings us to 1988 and the arrival of the Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive for our international listeners.
The Genesis marked a turning point for Sega.
Yeah.
They went all in, with Sega of America leading the charge with their aggressive marketing strategy. Their tactic.
What was it?
Directly challenge Nintendo, highlight the Genesis's superior 16-bit processing power. Remember those, Genesis does what Nintendo adds.
Oh, absolutely. Pure marketing gold. And of course, we can't forget about the birth of a certain blue hedgehog in 1991. Sonic, with his toot and need for speed, he became the perfect mascot for this new era of Sega.
Sonic was a stroke of genius, Cool, edgy, a complete departure from Nintendo's mascot lineup.
Totally.
Sonic the Hedgehog became a massive hit, pushing the Genesis to new heights of popularity.
For a while there, Sega was on top of the world. The Genesis outsold the Super Nintendo for 4 consecutive Christmas seasons.
Wow.
David versus Goliath, and David was racking up the wins.
This period wasn't just significant for Sega's success, it actually left a lasting mark on the entire video game industry. Believe it or not, Sega's marketing tactics and the games they published led to the creation of the first video game rating system in America.
Now that's something I wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Sega, with its edgier image, started pushing boundaries, testing what was considered acceptable in video games. Games like Night Trap on the Sega CD, an add-on for the Genesis, stirred up controversy for their more mature themes.
Okay.
And then there was Mortal Kombat, wildly popular, but its graphic violence sparked a public outcry.
It sounds like this was a defining moment for the entire industry. Suddenly, everyone was discussing the potential impact of video games on young minds.
Exactly. Sega, recognizing the need for guidelines and perhaps to get ahead of potential government regulation, took the initiative and introduced the Video Game Rating Council, or VRC for short.
Right.
This paved the way for the ESRB rating system we have today.
Wow. Sega's influence went way beyond just selling consoles. It's remarkable how they went from those early arcade days to shaping the future of how games are classified.
It's a testament to their ability to adapt and influence the industry as a whole. But as with all periods of triumph, Sega's golden age wouldn't last forever. The story of the Sega Saturn, well, that's where things take another unexpected turn. You know, for as much success as the Genesis brought Sega the Saturn story is really a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of how even industry giants can stumble.
Yeah. The Saturn is one of those consoles that gamers still debate today.
Right.
Some call it a misunderstood classic. Others see it as a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So based on what you've seen, what led to the Saturn's struggles?
Well, despite some early success in Japan,
Okay.
fueled by the popularity of 3D fighters like Virtua Fighter,
Right.
the Saturn faced some serious challenges right out of the gate.
From what I've heard, its hardware was notoriously difficult for developers to work with.
Yeah.
Was that a factor?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The Saturn's complex architecture made it a real challenge for developers to tap into its full potential.
Right.
And then there was that infamous surprise U.S. launch in 1995.
Ah, yes. SEGA of America, trying to beat Sony to the punch, launched the Saturn earlier than expected.
Right.
Didn't go over so well with retailers, did it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Retailers were blindsided, left scrambling to stock a console they didn't even know was coming.
Wow.
SEGA of Japan applied the pressure, SEGA of America buckled, and it ended up creating this PR nightmare that alienated some key partners.
On top of that, I seem to recall the Saturn was priced higher than its main competitor, the Sony PlayStation.
You're right.
Okay.
The higher price tag, coupled with a limited launch library, put the Saturn at a real disadvantage.
For sure.
Even a price drop and some truly amazing exclusive titles like Nights into Dreams and Panzer Dragoon Saga couldn't compete with the PlayStation's momentum.
It's almost ironic. Here's SEGA, the company that revolutionized arcades with immersive experiences, and they were struggling to find their footing in the home console market.
Right.
Weren't they still pushing boundaries in the arcades even during this time?
You're absolutely right. It's fascinating how, even while the Saturn struggled, Sega's arcade business was thriving.
Wow.
They were pushing the boundaries of 3D gaming with their Model 2 and Model 3 arcade boards, introducing visually stunning games like Daytona USA Virtua Cop and Virtua Fighter 2.
It seems like SEGA was facing a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Their expertise in arcade gaming, which brought them so much success, might have made it harder for them to adapt to the rapidly evolving home console market.
That's a great observation.
Okay.
And it brings us to a pivotal moment for Sega.
Okay.
By 1997, their financial situation was becoming increasingly precarious.
Oh, no.
They even attempted a merger with Bandai, the toy company.
Wow.
But it ultimately fell apart.
So they were facing mounting financial pressures, increased competition from Sony, and a resurgent Nintendo. What was their next move?
In 1998, Sega experienced its first financial loss since going public.
Move.
It was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
They knew they needed to do something radical, something innovative.
Right.
Enter the Dreamcast.
The Dreamcast. A console that was truly ahead of its time.
Right.
Built-in online gaming, sleek design, a library of innovative titles. It felt like a real return to form for Sega.
It really did.
Yeah.
The Dreamcast's U.S. launch in 1999 was a huge success.
Nice.
They set sales records, and games like Sonic Adventure Jet Set Radio and Shenmue were pushing the boundaries of what console games could be.
But even with all that going for it, the Dreamcast ultimately couldn't overcome the challenges it faced. Right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
Despite its innovation and early success, the Dreamcast was hit by what I can only describe as a perfect storm. The PlayStation 2, with its DVD playback capabilities and massive pre-release hype, was on the horizon, and Sega, still reeling from financial setbacks, just couldn't keep pace.
It's still hard to believe that the Dreamcast, a console that felt like it was from the future, marked the end of an era.
It was a heartbreaking decision.
Yeah.
But in 2001, Sega officially discontinued the Dreamcast, effectively ending their reign as a console manufacturer.
Wow.
They made the incredibly tough choice to transition to third-party software development.
So instead of making their own consoles, they would focus on creating games for other platforms.
Right.
A risky move, to say the least.
Incredibly risky, but it was ultimately the right call.
Okay.
They had some rocky years early on, even exploring a merger with Sammy Corporation. By 2004, Sammy had acquired a controlling interest in Sega. And that's how Sega, Sammy Holdings, and Entertainment Conglomerate was born.
So how has Sega fared since stepping away from the console market? What have been some of their successes, and what does Sega look like today?
That merger with Sammy provided much-needed stability.
Right.
And they continued to develop games for other consoles.
Okay.
Franchises like Yakuza and Total War, along with their continued work on the Sonic series, found a lot of success.
Didn't they also continue to make waves in the arcade scene?
They did.
Okay.
I remember reading something about that. Even after exiting the console market, Sega continued to innovate in arcades, coming up with unique concepts like Derby Owners Club.
What's that?
It's a horse racing simulation game that can take over half an hour to play.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It speaks to their roots in a way they never lost sight of that arcade spirit of pushing boundaries and trying new things.
Exactly. Sega today is a company that has constantly adapted and evolved.
Right.
They've embraced digital gaming, mobile gaming, and continue to find success as a developer and publisher.
It sounds like they've taken a page from their own playbook. They've learned from their past, embraced change, and continued to innovate.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
Their story is a powerful reminder that even when faced with incredible challenges, adaptation and resilience can lead to new opportunities.
Right.
Sega's journey is far from over.
That's a great place to wrap up today's deep dive.
Yeah.
What started with a simple question, how did Sega go from jukeboxes to Sonic, ended up unveiling a story of innovation, risk-taking, and adaptation.
It really did.
From those early days of importing jukeboxes to becoming a video game titan and ultimately embracing life as a third-party developer, Sega's journey reminds us that in the ever-changing landscape of technology and entertainment, the only constant is change. Thanks for diving deep with us, and until next time, game on.